Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:06. Thanks for joining us on this rainy Tuesday morning. It's O'Connor and Company. And man, oh man, it's one of those days where we have been counting the minutes since 10 a.m. yesterday. There's a gift doing the morning show here on WMAL. The gift is that you get to be the first person to talk about the biggest issues. You set the table for everybody else. Let's face it, everyone else copies us. They listen to us, Julie, and they decide what they're going to say, except for days like this where the big news hit at 10 a.m.
That's right.
And now we're like, oh, we got to wait till tomorrow? We got to wait till tomorrow to talk about a unanimous decision from the Supreme Court. But we'll sort of, you know what? Now we're in the Mark Levin position. We get to have the last word.
The good news is that even late into the night last night, people were making fools of themselves.
Yes.
So.
Thankfully, there is a wealth of content of heads exploding.
Yes.
And we're going to give it all to you. Also, at 6:35, Kimberly Lowe is running for the U.S. Senate in Virginia. 7:05, Hans von Spakovsky on that ballot decision. At 7:35, you may have just seen her on 60 Minutes, or at least an edited version of her. Tina Deskovich, she's of Moms for Liberty, will join us about that interview and about the move to clean smut out of our public schools. At 8:05, Sean Spicer will join us. And then at 8:35, Denise Rucker-Krepp on the D.C. crime bill, heading for a final vote today.
Great lineup.
It is. And of course, Julie Gunlock. I buried the lead. Most importantly, we have Julie Gunlock all morning long. To comment on all of these things. I am Larry O'Connor, and it was 9-0. And I want to say, and I said it at the time, I said it when we were talking about it for the last 2 weeks, when Joe DeGenova first floated this. I remember we had him on almost immediately after the oral arguments, and I said, boy, Joe, it sure sounded like most of the justices here are ready to vote against this Colorado
not
thing.
sympathetic.
And Joe said, this is going to be unanimous.
Mm-hmm.
I said, really? Not even Ketanji? This will be, he called it. He just reiterated that yesterday when we talked about it. But when I saw that come down, and this has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It really doesn't. And you need to know that, by the way. This decision, some of the criticisms of this decision was that, they answered, I saw this Sonny Hostin on The View, that legal scholar.
Oh, dear.
Said, one of the things Supreme Court's not supposed to do is answer questions that they haven't been asked. Go pound sand. That's not true at all. Oftentimes, the Supreme Court will look at an issue and see an overriding constitutional principle that has to be addressed.
Of course.
And in this case, they preemptively said, in fact, this isn't about Donald Trump. This is about anybody.
Any state's ability.
And any individual who
right.
may be targeted by a state. This isn't your decision. This is a congressional decision.
Right.
And she was upset because she kept saying, other fellow insurrectionists. Okay, legal scholar, can you show me one person charged with insurrection? Yeah. It's so frustrating.
This would be an entirely different conversation if he had been charged with insurrection, if Trump had been charged with insurrection.
Even then, though, it is ultimately the same
That's right.
conversation, which is this is not up for one state to decide for everybody. Maybe you could make the case that one state can decide whether their representative in Congress should be able to hold office, but certainly not how it affects the uniqueness of the presidency and the way the Electoral College is determined, which ironically was the root of much of the debate leading up to January 6th, by the way. But when I saw this come down, knowing that it's not about Donald Trump, knowing that it's about the Constitution, knowing that it's about the right for people to vote, knowing that it's about the people having the final verdict on this, not a handful of, not 4 justices on the Colorado Supreme Court or a Secretary of State unelected, a traffic court judge in Illinois, that ultimately you let the people decide. I honestly, when I saw that 9-0 headline, I got emotional.
So did I. And
this
honestly,
is such a great thing for America.
And honestly, Larry, I have thought that this country is broken for so long, and I've worried so much about our union. And this shows that the court is standing, that the court is still for the law, and standing up for our Constitution. And I felt light yesterday. I really felt like this is a good sign for our country.
Yeah. And And then the reactions came.
Right.
And I went from feeling light to feeling jubilant.
So cool.
And I had forgotten. So
I mean, and this is why, thank God there's X, because it was very funny watching not only the meltdowns, but the commentary on the meltdowns.
Oh, yeah.
And let me tell you, the legal commentary in this country, I mean, people made real fools of themselves.
They did. It was beautiful. Mm-hmm. And all the right people made fools of themselves too. And I immediately had to start show prepping for my town hall show. I do a daily town hall show at noon, a live video stream. And so I immediately, of course, started searching, MSNBC legal analyst Colorado to find the archives to see what they were saying at the time about this. And here's one of my favorites.
Argument that the voters should have the say and not the courts.
Why are you standing with Confederates who betrayed this country? And this is what they're standing with, is the spirit of those Confederates rather than the Americans who came together after a long and brutal civil war.
That's Mara Gay of the New York Times.
Is she that tampon earring lady?
No.
Sorry.
Where is she?
Boy,
she's
sorry,
gone.
it sounded like her.
No, this is
Just
Mara
as
Gay.
crazy.
She's on the editorial board of the New York Times. She's the one who couldn't do the basic math, thinking that Mike Bloomberg would actually it would be cheaper for him to pay every voter $1 million instead of buying ads.
Oh, she's wonderful.
And
Just
she
a
is,
gift.
Joe Scarborough. What do you say to the people who just say, let the voters decide? Why are you standing with the Confederates and the spirit of the slave-owning Confederacy?
Oh, my gosh.
That was one of the lighter...
I missed that one.
Yeah, and of course she was on the side of Colorado unilaterally deciding that Donald Trump couldn't be on the ballot. And more importantly, and again, everybody keeps focusing it through the eyes of Donald Trump and what Donald Trump wants and what Donald Trump won and what Donald Trump needs. The Colorado State Supreme Court and the various, the traffic judge in Illinois and the Secretary of State in Maine, who never actually was elected, she's appointed.
She's nuts.
They're not actually trying to keep Donald Trump from the ballot. They're trying to keep you from voting for Donald Trump. That's what this is. And the only way they can do it is to keep Trump off the ballot.
And again, choice architecture has been the darling philosophy of the left. And I've explained this before, where you set out the choices. It's like when I give my kids a choice of apple slices or carrots, and it gives them this sense of a choice, but really you've controlled the choices.
Well said.
And that's what the left has been wanting to do to people in this country for a long time. And it's not just about food. Now it extends to the presidential
Would you
election.
like to hear more of the media meltdown yesterday?
Yes.
Would you like to just hear it?
Yes,
Well,
let's
there's
do it.
more. There's a lot more.
Are we going to continue?
We've learned that it was a 9-0 decision ruling that Donald Trump can be on the ballot in Colorado and other states.
I'm not confident that will produce a result that's good for American democracy.
This is actually what I had been concerned about. I had been concerned that should it go to the Supreme Court, they would rule this way.
I'd laugh if it weren't so sad.
My next guest says Donald Trump is still an oath-breaking insurrectionist. Do you have confidence in the Supreme Court? Do you think this court is partisan?
The court itself may have overstepped.
The court went way further than it needed to go.
Our colleague Melissa Murray has called this Supreme Court the YOLO court.
The criticism of the court is that they're playing interference.
Not since Bush v. Gore have we seen a court that's had this many opportunities to interfere in the election.
Yeah, election interference. 9-0. Elena Ketanji Brown Jackson is interfering in the election. Keith we'll get to Keith Olbermann in a minute. And more reaction. And of course, right there, shoulder to shoulder on the ideological and temperamental spectrum with Keith Olbermann, David French. We'll get to all of it in a sec, but first it's 5:15 WMAL.
WMAL, making sense of the headlines because common sense isn't so common. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
I think it will go a long way toward bringing our country together, which our country needs. And they worked long, they worked hard, and frankly, they worked very quickly on something that will be spoken about 100 years from now and 200 years from now. Extremely important. Essentially, you cannot take somebody out of a race because an opponent would like to have it that way.
Donald Trump reacting yesterday, and again, I'd love for people in his inner circle to talk to him about this. I know it's hard, but the way we communicate these things are so important. And as I just sort of tried to frame this, it would go so far if Donald Trump framed it this way as well. To say, you can't take someone off the ballot. No, you can't prevent the American people from being able to vote.
That's right.
For a candidate of their choice.
He needs to make it bigger than him.
I know. It's not that it's not bad and it's not wrong, because I understand that that's his perspective and it's understandable. I'm just saying it would be so much better. It would be so much bigger. It would resonate so much more, and it would be harder for people to
argue.
When
he makes it about himself, which we know it's about him. It's 100% about him. But who's to say they won't do this?
Right.
Remember how they treated Romney. We always forget that. We always think that, it's unique to Trump because he's Trump.
Yeah.
No. I mean, it was horrifying what they said about Romney and Ryan.
Jenna Griswold, the Colorado Secretary of State, who started all of this in the first place.
My larger reaction is disappointment. I do believe that states should be able, under our Constitution, to bar oath-breaking insurrectionists. And ultimately, this decision leaves open the door for Congress to act to pass authorizing legislation. But we know that Congress is a nearly non-functioning body. So ultimately, it will be up to the American voters to save our democracy in November.
So sad that it'll be up to the voters. And by the way, if voters go in the think about what she just said. It's up to voters to save our democracy. In other words, it's up to voters to not vote for Donald Trump. But if voters, think about the logic of what she just said. If the American voters come out in huge numbers and overwhelmingly vote, because that's what it'll take, overwhelmingly vote for Donald Trump. Those voters, by voting for the candidate of their choice, has killed democracy.
That's right.
Think about that. Think about
logic.
How you need to twist your warped little leftist brain into an unrecognizable pretzel to come up with that.
You're
of course.
cheered
You're
for
the
it.
intellectual.
By
the intellectual heft.
By the media, by entertainment, by corporations. This is the type of thinking that gets you on television, that gets you the invites, that gets you the glory.
Yeah. David French.
Oh, dear.
The conservative thought leader of our times, the man who is basically the shining beacon in the night. When you want to know what's the real conservative position, you wait to hear what David French has to say in the New York Times, and then you can sort of, you put it into your own words and then regurgitate it on cable news. That's how a lot of these TV talking heads used to go about their day, actually. So let's see what David French, the one who is the true conservative, remember.
That's right.
This is the headline. The Supreme Court just erased part of the Constitution. As Molly Hemingway, our friend and hero, properly put it, David French is now far to the left of Ketanji Brown Jackson.
That's exactly right.
This is why 9-0 is so powerful.
Right. And it's probably why the Supreme Court knew they had to have an unanimous decision.
You know what? And God bless, honestly, because he deserves criticism now and again, but John Roberts got it. He saw that. Because there were concurring opinions. There were other things that even Amy Coney Barrett said, I think this.
Yeah.
And the three liberal women, Sotomayor, they had a concurring that was like, I'd rather that.
Right.
But John Roberts, I think he sat them all in the room, metaphorically. I don't think they actually literally sit in the same room.
Maybe.
And said, ladies and gentlemen, you have every right to write your own concurring opinion, but we are not leaving until the 9 of us find one thing that we can all agree on here.
I'm telling you, thank God they did, because after Dobbs and that leak, the Supreme Court's reputation has taken a hit appropriately. I mean, the fact that we still don't know who the Dobbs leaker was is so disturbing.
John Roberts knows.
Yeah.
And I think that's the root of it.
And this, the court is back.
So that's David French's position, that he
yeah.
is actually to the left of Ketanji Brown Jackson, and et cetera, et cetera. And right there with him is Keith Olbermann. Keith Olbermann.
2 peas in a pod.
Keith Olbermann says the Supreme Court has just betrayed democracy. Its members, including Jackson, Kagan, and Sotomayor, have proved themselves inept at reading comprehension. And it's impossible to read his tweets and not do it in his voice.
You should be spitting.
He's the worst person in the world.
And sweating.
Collectively, the court, in quotation marks, has shown itself to be corrupt and illegitimate. It must be dissolved. So
must be dissolved.
Yes. The Supreme Court has betrayed democracy, and therefore we must dissolve the institution.
Good God.
This is what Trump does to them. Yeah. Or this is what you do to them for voting for Trump or supporting Trump. Do you understand? And that because of that, you have to keep it up because it's just too good. Trump is an oath-breaking insurrectionist. He's a fascist, and he will destroy our democratic systems and our Constitution. And since the 9 members of the Supreme Court disagree with me, we must dissolve the Supreme Court to protect our Constitution. That's Keith Olbermann's logic and his friends, like David French.
Yes.
Somebody replied to him on
so
X and said, "Cry more, Keith, 9-0. And he replied, this is Keith Olbermann's, and I will read his reply verbatim. "Those aren't tears, fascist. They're urine. I'm sure you enjoyed being bathed in it."
What? He needs to...
In his blind, white-hot rage and his attempt to own people on social media, Keith Olbermann needed to tell everyone that he has urine in his eyes.
What is going on?
Because that'll show him.
Honestly, he needs to see a doctor.
Elon Musk must never delete his account.
Well, that's true.
We need him on that wall. There's more all morning long, including Hans von Spakovsky. Hans will be here. Coming up at 8:05.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:37 here on O'Connor and Company on this Super Tuesday in your nation's capital. It's exciting. Super Tuesday.
That is.
I mean, it's a little less so this year.
Yeah.
It's it basically have 2 incumbents running.
That's right.
But we'll see. We'll see how close Nikki Haley comes in some of the states, right? We've got you covered on all the politics, and you need to be prepared for the politics of our time because it's getting crazy out there, and it's going to get even crazier. That's why you've got us here. And coming up, we're going to make sense of what's going on at 6:35 with Kimberly Lowe, candidate for Senate in Virginia. 7:05, Hans von Spakovsky on the Supreme Court decision. At 7:35, Moms for Liberty co-founder Tina Deskovich. 8:05, Sean Spicer. And at 8:35, Denise Rucker-Krepp on the D.C. crime bill up for a vote today. That's all coming up. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Julie, good morning to you. We need you to step up here and give us an update on the royal family. Now, no, there hasn't been a death. There hasn't been a new coronation. There isn't a wedding. There isn't a divorce. In fact, we're not even going to mention Meghan Markle in this. We literally have a story about the royal family that just involves the actual royals, not some, ill-fated B-list movie star. There's weird stuff going on with the royals. In fact,
a lot of sickness.
The big 4, the Mount Rushmore that's left there is the King, Charles.
Yes, who has cancer.
His queen consort, Camilla. And, of course, the Prince of Wales, the heir apparent, Prince William, and his wife, the future Queen Kate Middleton.
Yes.
And they're all sick. Missing in action.
Well, not all sick. The King has cancer. Kate had abdominal surgery is all they're saying.
Now, she was last seen publicly like mid-December,
Yeah, but
right?
she was actually just seen on Monday driving with her mother.
Was that her?
Well, that's the strange thing. It doesn't really look like her. And as someone on Twitter said, we have this is so funny. We have clearer photos of Pluto. It's a very grainy photo.
The shaky 8mm video
it's like
film of Bigfoot.
It's a Bruder film.
Is
seriously.
Actually a little clearer.
Yeah.
And you're right. Well, and what's interesting about this sighting of Kate Middleton in a car with this grainy photograph wearing big sunglasses and what appears to be a Kate Middleton mask, it comes about 72 hours after the "Where is Kate Middleton" thing really started to steamroll, which tells you they said, well, we got to get her out there.
We got to get her out there. So the conspiracy theories are out there that she's much sicker than they're letting on. They've been rather private about this. And, of course, the royal family is private, and William in particular, because of what happened with his mother. He has always had this very guarded approach. Mm-hmm. And they live very, in many ways, I mean, they do public events all the time, but they have a very private sort of family life. And so she was recently seen. This is the weird thing. William has actually announced that he's taking time off from official duties, but so is I always say Kamala, and it's not Camilla.
No, Kamala's still doing official duties, talking about concentric circles and Venn diagrams, and
So the four, as you say, the Mount Rushmore, the four top brass in the royal family have now taken time off, mysteriously in some cases.
Right.
And then they trot out the Duke of Kent, who's, I think, 100 years old.
Oh, yeah. No, he
can barely walk. And so he's doing official duties instead of
he advised King George III on the revolution.
Sophie and Edward haven't been seen much, and we all know, of course.
And Andrew is sort of on
Andrew
the sideline.
No, he's not allowed to do official duties, and no one wants to send Fergie out there, for goodness' sake.
They don't have a deep bench.
They don't have a deep bench, and so it's interesting that that we're not seeing much of this family anymore.
William and Kate, of course, pretty much transcend in terms of public opinion. They're very beloved.
Oh yes,
she is dignified and classy and beautiful.
Graceful. Yes.
And I saw a picture of her, and
You saw the one on Monday?
No, I saw what was one of the last photos of her before her sort of seclusion. And sadly, with the internet these days, I did as much due diligence as possible to see how accurate and legit this photo was. But I must say, and based on my research, it was an actual photo. It was one of the few times I've seen her and thought, my gosh, what's happened? Because she looked incredibly gaunt. She looked like she'd aged 15 years. And listen, I'm no spring chicken, but your image of Kate Middleton is just sort of youthful, classy, upper class British, pristine, exquisite look, and she didn't. She definitely, there was something wrong with her.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a reason she's been in the hospital for 2 years and
2 months.
I'm sorry, no, it's not 2. I don't think. Has it been 2 months?
Well, it's been since mid-December since she was last. Okay, you're right. Not,
anyway, it's not
under medical care.
Yeah, she's been under medical care, but I think she's been in the hospital for 2 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. But anyway, the point is obviously a significant surgery.
Yeah.
I had emergency appendectomy a couple weeks, and I know that is like a nothing burger of a surgery, but that when you're in the hospital for 2 weeks, that's something significant. Yeah. So, and again, she's been out of the spotlight. William seems tense. He recently canceled going to an event, which is unheard of.
Listen, this is the country who gave us, Paul McCartney is dead, and they put a body double in his place for the last 60 years. This will never. This is it. I mean, forever now, the Daily Mail or some of the tabloids on Fleet Street, they will always be questioning whether the Kate Middleton we see is the actual Kate Middleton. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is.
Right, but I don't know. I think there's something. I think they are significantly unwell.
I was at Buckingham Palace last summer. And I'm going to tell you,
just were dying to.
That place has mold. I'm telling you right now. There's spores in that place. They got to clean it up. It's old.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking maybe they all got sick.
Well,
is that possible?
Yeah, that's definitely possible. They don't live. I don't think they live at Buckingham Palace.
That's true. They're at
Windsor or at Clarence. No, that's
Charles. Honestly, you have a few primary roles on this show, and one of them is to be the royal family expert.
I'm not as good as Patrice.
Well, she's a subject of the crown.
I know.
All right. So what's the bottom line here? I need your opinion. Is the royal family dying off before our eyes?
I wonder.
Is it the Bilderbergers?
They're with the big jaws. No, that was the Habsburgs. Sorry. I don't know, but I think there's some trouble here, and I definitely think there's.
Do you think that was really Kate? You guys should see the picture that they're floating out here saying, "Look, Kate's fine. She's fine. Everything's fine." That is someone wearing a Kate Middleton mask.
Or it's Michael Jackson.
Either that, or she's who also is not dead, by the way. Right. He's partying with Elvis, his father-in-law. I would say if she has been undergoing medical treatment, it's possible that she is retaining water and she's there's some inflammation going on.
Yeah.
And by the way, doesn't that sort of sometimes go with chemos? I know that sometimes you think with chemo you end up getting very thin and gaunt, but sometimes because of all the IV treatments, you actually end up sort of puffing up.
Yeah. The bottom line is that there's a lot of conspiracy theories, and this picture of Kate Middleton is not going to reduce those conspiracy theories. Well, it's actually going to fuel them.
There you go. I think we've cleared a lot up here. 544.
Making sense of your world.
Thank you for what you do.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
You give me hope.
Making sense of the news.
So, as we mentioned, it's Super Tuesday, and it looks like Donald Trump is going to have a clean sweep here. And by midnight tonight, there's no doubt about it, he is the nominee for the Republican Party. And I just want to mention that things are going to go from crazy to like freaking out of your head insane. Because I'll give you a perfect example. Rob Reiner, the actor, film director, political activist, meathead. Rob Reiner is trending right now on social media. And if you go to look why, it's because Rob Reiner, there are reports that Rob Reiner said he would set himself on fire if Donald Trump was elected. Now, he didn't actually say that. I want to get in front of this immediately. We know we have looked and we can't find the original source. It's just begun this sort of.
The tweet that I'm seeing is he has said so in the past.
But there's no link, there's no video, there's no audio, there's no statement quoted by any kind of publication. It's just one of those social media things. But people believe it. My instinct was, oh my God, Rob Reiner. 5-10 years ago, if I said that, an actor said that he was going to set himself on fire if, his politician of choice doesn't get into office, you'd laugh. Of course not. That wouldn't happen. These days, it's like, oh, yeah, I get that. Yeah, sure. That's possible.
Yeah, the left.
Because that's how crazy they are now.
That is absolutely how crazy are they. In fact, we have been watching that Air Force guy who set himself on, lionized by the left. People
He's a hero.
He was brave.
He literally set himself on fire on behalf of a terrorist cause, on behalf of Hamas.
They are celebrating him.
Yes, they're doing candlelight vigils. They've got a little shrine there.
Yeah, and on social media, many people have commented what a brave, selfless act it was.
Yeah. So this, and by the way, the responses to my favorite is from our friend Stephen Miller, Red Stees. He writes for the Spectrum with media. Somebody said, Rob Reiner says he's going to set himself on fire if Trump wins. What's your reaction? And all Stephen Miller put out there was a one of those homemade electoral maps that shows the entire country red, except California and New York. It's like, that's it's pretty funny reactions. But I lay this, and again, I just want to reiterate, there is no actual evidence that Rob Reiner said that he would set himself on fire, but because it's believable.
Yeah, it is totally believable. But don't forget, just a couple of years ago, we had people offering Ruth Bader Ginsburg their organs.
Yeah.
Okay, so that she could last longer.
To keep abortions happening.
People have completely lost their minds in this country.
And it's about to get worse.
Yeah.
It is about to get worse. And that's why I lay it out here for you, because you're going to need a port in the storm. You're going to need a lighthouse. You're going to need an anchor. I can't come up with any other stormy seas nautical references for you, but you're going to need us. And by the way, we're going to need you, because it's about to go from bad to worse as you look at what the left has done. You see, they lost the presidency in 2016, and instead of make the case as to why you voted wrong and you should have gone their way based on ideas, based on policies, based on principles and values, based on just putting up a better person as the candidate than the one you voted for. Instead, they tried to derail the entire presidency by spying on innocent American citizens and trying to convince you, and they harnessed the media in this lie, and the media was part of the lie, to convince you that Donald Trump actually stole the election with the help of Russians in Moscow. Mm-hmm. And when that didn't work, they were about to lose the next election, and so they went to extraordinary means, once again, not based on policies, not based on ideas, not based on principles, not based on a better candidate, but based on whatever trick they could throw in the book, and they got their guy in, and now the country is a complete disaster. Joe Biden cannot run for re-election saying, I'm going to give you 4 more years of all of this beauty that I've given you already, because it's a mess.
Disaster.
They're running against a man, Donald Trump, who's so, if you say, what does Donald Trump stand for? You ask anybody in the world, literally on the planet, it's border security. And they're now entering an election where they have upended border security to such a state where we have had upwards to 10 million people crossing the border, including murderers and rapists. They've
not vetted.
Validated everything that Donald Trump said in 2016 about the border.
Kids missing.
And they think they're not going to win on ideas. They're not going to win on the economy. They're not going to win on national security. And they're not going to win because their guy's better than Donald Trump because their guy is barely alive. What we're about to see in the next 7 months, Julie, is going to be so over the top insane that we need to be prepared. We need to be ready, and we need to take a deep breath and get through every day together, holding hands and as much as we can laughing at their lunacy, because it's going to get rough. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Is Rob Reiner going to set himself on fire if Trump wins?
Possibly.
It is, and it's not outside the realm of possibility, but it's not absolutely proven at this moment. It's 5:53.